bounds of, I guess, any formal system, whether it's classical logic or a non-classical logic. If you're saying it's outside the bounds there, yeah. I guess, I mean, I don't think I have anything to say to that. I mean, is that a problem? I mean,
yeah.
It's going to
be
a problem.
It's a problem.
I mean, it's going to be a problem for me as far as understanding it. But, you know, there might, so the only issue that I see is that if it does violate, you know, these rules, you know, it's going to be, I'm not going to be able to understand it. And yeah. I don't think there's much to say after that. And it's going to be a reason for me to reject it as well.
Yeah.
So
I got a trinity that you can't reject.
Hold on a second, Sonic.
Yeah, that's so does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I guess I can understand your rejection of it. And when you appeal to, and when you reason with it, are you reasoning with classical logic? And is there any room to step outside of it and say, hey, is there a, hey, maybe what if I found some sort of quantum logic or some sort of other referential logic that would possibly explain something that would be transcendent of logic itself? And in that, there's an easy escape hatch and an appeal to mystery, but one in which you would say is simply just inadequate, basically.
Yeah, there might be. I mean, I'm not a steadfast, like, true believer of classical logic. There might be problems with classical logic. Perhaps the non-classical logicians have it right. But as far as I know, there isn't even, sorry for the alarm. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any non-classical formal system that can make sense of it. But, you know, yeah, so the answer to the question is sure. Yeah, there might be issues with classical logic. You know, there are paradoxes that, you know, might lead us to think that there's a non-classical logic alternative might be better. Sure. But I'm not aware of any non-classical logic that can actually give us the work to understand Trinitarian statements.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing I wanted to ask you about was a statement that I think you made that had me very puzzled when you were debating Andrew Wilson. And one of them that you said, and this is about metaethics and the standard of morality as an abstract and constant or an actualizer. You made the statement that, well, he is the subject, so therefore he would be subjective. And I didn't. And then what happened was, no, it was Jay that said, oh, well, that's not true. That's a category error. Do you think that that's correct, that it was a category error?
No, I don't think that was correct.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I failed to follow it. Can you tell me why I failed to follow it? Why I failed to see why it's a category error?
Well, on subjectivism, all it is that what makes the moral statement true, or what makes for the moral facts, is that it depends on an attitude or a stance or a value. And it won't matter whose value it is. If it's Jesus's values or God's values, it's still dependent on them. And so it counts as a form of subjectivism by that definition.
Yeah, I get that. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that's really another way of, do you think you just repackage Euthyphro at all? Or is this some sort of offset or spin-off of the same proposition?
Is it related to the Euthyphro? It might be. I'm not inclined to say yes, though. I guess there's a question. So some people say that morality doesn't depend on God's attitudes or views or will, but it depends on something other than that about God. Then it wouldn't be subjectivism, right? So there's, you know, so one response to the Euthyphro is that morality doesn't depend on the will of God. It depends on some other fact about God, and then it wouldn't be subjectivist anymore. So I guess it's sort of related.
Yeah. So if I can push back a little bit, if you say it's at that point, the subjectivism breaks down. If I say that he is the standard in nature, his standard is omnibenevolent. So therefore everything flows from his standard, would therefore thus be good, righteous, or just. And if I equip it and say as the assigner of value, therefore, if he is the assigner of value, he is the standard of value. Sort of the C.S. Lewis
Yeah. The
statement that
ruler.
there's a line, and then there's yeah, of course, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So if you say that it's not God's will, it's God himself or God's nature that constitutes the good, that would not be subjectivism.
Get it. I get it. And he probably uses it the wrong way. So what do you think about that statement as far as him being the standard of all goodness and everything flowing from that nature to be, because in that, right, in that package is also justice, right? So is there a conflation of the term? Like, well, you can't have goodness without justice and justice without goodness. And so as far as him being the standard of all goodness and everything flowing from that nature to be, because in that, right, in that package is also justice, right? So is there a conflation of the term? Like, well, you can't have goodness without justice and justice without goodness. And so here comes divine command theory as a Calvary in for the rescue.
So maybe I haven't understood. So
and everything flowing from that nature to be, because in that, right, in that package is also justice. Right. So is there a conflation of the term? Like, well, you can't have goodness without justice and justice without goodness. And so here comes divine command theory as a Calvary in for the rescue.
So maybe I haven't understood. So what do I think about the statement that God himself or God's nature is the standard of good? Like, what do I think about that? Is that the question?
Yeah. So if I say justice is part of goodness, and goodness has to come with justice, so whenever it's invoked or carried out, therefore it is still a part of his goodness. I think that it sounds good, right? I have no problems with it.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what it would mean to say that it's unjust but it's good, or it's good, or that it's just but it's bad. Right? I mean, these are near synonyms. We think when we use the term justice, however, we often think in terms of punishment. So what is just might have to do with goods concerning what we do about people doing the wrong thing or what people deserve.
Yeah.
But I don't think it really makes sense to say that it was just, but it was like a bad thing, all else being equal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if someone were to say, so if I were to come back and tell you, well, hey, Danny, you're the own arbiter of your morality. So therefore, and here's the classic one you're going to hear a lot, right? Well, what makes yours so much better than mine, and so on and so forth. And so by your own framework and worldview, are you the own arbiter of your morality? And if not, then if so, then is there a problem with that? Because I would contend that there is, obviously.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I am not inclined to say that I'm the arbiter of my own morality is because very often I don't make choices as to what I value. So there are certain things I care about or I value, not because I chose to value them or care about them. It's just the way that I am, or my psychology, or the way I was raised, or maybe even human nature or biology. I don't know, right? The point is that I care about things and I can't help but care about it. I can't choose to not care about it. I don't know how to do that. So it seems like what I would want to say is that many of our values are determined externally. And in that sense, I'm not the arbiter of those values.
Well, I would agree with you to a point there, Danny, obviously, because I get a lot of flack from some people within my own Christian worldview. I'm a Calvinist, so I would definitely agree with you that it's determined. I think if it's been pushed into motion and there's a sovereign decree and there's prophetic utterance that determine outcomes, how could it not be, right? And so at the same time, however, I'm going to give it a different source. And so when I give it this different source as an absolute or actualizer, you would push back on that. Why would you push back on that?
Well, I'm fine to say that, by source, do you mean God? Because I'm fine to say that there are things that explain my values external from me, but I don't think that among those things are God's. But if it turned out that they were God's, or if Christianity were true, then I would just think that God organized the world to where I was determined to have these values. And I don't think my view would change very much, my meta-ethical view.
Yeah, so you'd be a Calvinist is what you're saying, right, Dan?
Well, I actually think that the Calvinists kind of recognize what's going on, although the alternative is that God wanted it to be random. And I don't see how people think that that's any worse or better. In fact, it looks even worse. Maybe not.
Sure.
So God could either set up the world where I'm determined to have these values, or set the world where they were random.
Right. Yeah, what do you think is the most likely outcome? If you're granting me my worldview and you say, okay, well, I've subscribed to this Max Omni deity and all of his proclamations, which are made revelatory in Scripture, and so if you were to grant that, what is the only logical outcome that would be feasible?
Well, feet to the fire, I think the Calvinists probably have it better than the indeterminist.
Oh, Danny, you didn't. All right, we'll just get that out of the way.
But by the way, there are non-Calvinists that agree. For instance, many Thomists agree with Calvinists.
Yeah,
so
I got a few Thomist buddies that come on and rock every now and then. Yeah, so as far as that's concerned, do you mind if I move on to the problem of the prime mover?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to ask you, are you? So you'd say you were a determinist. Can I ask what cosmology model is and your time model that you accompany that understanding with?
I don't really have a model. I don't know a lot of physics. I'm fine to accept a consensus, but I don't know the reasons behind. I mean, I know the common, background, microwave radiation, redshifting, and all that stuff. Right? 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry, alarm.
No problem.
I don't know how to defend any particular model well. It's not. It's interesting, but it's not something that I've invested my time in.
Yeah. It's like because most of your accolades are in philosophy itself. Now, I wanted to ask you this though, and I'm careful when I use the term accolade. If I lose service, it's because a UPS truck has just pulled up in front of my Elon antenna, and once he drops off his package, I might be good. Okay,
I can hear you
but just hang tight if you hang tight if you would. So here's the issue I wanted to move. So from the prime mover argument, if I were to say that since there's motion, there must be a mover. And you don't have a particular cosmology model or time model that you're beholden to. What are your issues with this? Let's say, and if I put it in Kalam or if I put it in the Thomist the way, how would you? I guess what are your contentions with that?
Well, first of all, I'm fine to say that within, we'll call it causal reality. Within causal reality, I'm fine to say that there is a first cause. I'm not so sure if there is or not. But I'm not so sure why I would be committed to thinking that the first cause or the first mover is a deity.
Sure.
So that would be, also I don't think the alternative, there being an infinite regress of causes is logically problematic either. Right. But either view seems, whether you think there's a first cause or you think there's no first cause, seems to be compatible with either atheism or theism.
Right. That's interesting. So you really don't have a problem with the first cause, but let me ask you this. If indeed it were the case that it's axiomatic, do we then have to assign it attributes, values, or any characteristics?
If we find out there's a first cause, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, if there were in fact this first cause, and would it therefore be necessary to assign it characteristics and attributes?
Necessary? Other than, the minimal description is that it's just the first cause. I think I might have to think that it's in time.
Mm-hmm. You might have to say it's in time?
I don't know what causes are outside of time.
Yeah, have you? And I don't want to get off the rails here, but this is really interesting. Have you studied any of this Ryan Mullen stuff before?
Oh yeah, study. It depends on what you mean by study, but I know.
Have you looked into it? Yeah. What do you think about
whole
that?
God being time, that stuff.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, I've looked. Well, I know a little bit about it. I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, he makes all the heckles on the back of our neck stand up within within proper theology. We don't know what to do with that guy. So with this
by study, but I know.
Have you looked into it? Yeah. What do you think about
whole
that?
God being
stand up within within proper theology. We don't know what to do with that guy. So with this first cause, and I'm going to say it has to have some attributes. And if it were the case that it was a first cause and you had to lend it, someone's got your feet to the fire and they say, okay, Danny, define this first cause for me and give it something, give it some characteristics. What do you define it as? Could you basically say, could you write off the script and sort of flesh it out, cash out and say, well, it's this energy and it has this. And if it were the case that it was a first cause and you had to lend it, someone's got your feet to the characteristics. What do you?
Well, I don't think it would have to be a mind or that, but it'd just be easier to say what the first cause isn't. right? I don't think it isn't human, right? I don't think it would be a good thing, right? Given the amount of evil.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fine to say that it's natural, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't. I don't. It's easier to say what it's not, on my view, than what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely would be easier because then you don't have anything to defend, I think. Yeah, so essentially when I assign characteristics and attributes, obviously it's very comfortable for me because it rationales my faith. Okay, so easy. So there's got to be this prime mover. And if he is the prime mover of all things and motions and all the utilities and properties in which he has moved, he therefore cannot be, or it cannot be, constrained to the utilities and properties in which he has set into motion. So therefore he has to be abstract. Now, when I proposition this, I would consider that the actualizer, right?
So it sounds like you're saying that what if you have a cause and effect, that like the cause can't
It's not
have,
limited to the effect. Yeah. What do you think?
well, I'm fine with saying that there can be causes, so there can be effects that have more powers than the cause.
Sure.
I'm fine to say that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really think there's that many constraints on what, if there's a cause effect relation, there's not that many constraints on the nature of the cause and the nature of the effect. I mean, there's very few logical constraints.
Yeah. What are the logical constraints?
Well, you know, I mean, it's maybe that the constraints would maybe be something to do with order, right? Like I would think of a cause as being ordered in a way where it's before the effect, or at the very least simultaneous. But even then, there's a kind of ordering, perhaps. But other than that, you know, that with maybe without the cause, there wouldn't be the effect. You know, you get something like that, but there's not that many logical constraints on what the nature of a cause and effect would be. You need to know more about the context.
Sure, absolutely. Now, with this prime mover that I've already subscribed to, I believe that I can hold my worldview into account epistemically. So obviously, you know where I'm going to go with this, and you've heard the impossibility of the contrary argument. So often what I ask people on this panel is I say, hey, you know, invoke something in lieu of, right? And then I get several different answers. Some are less persuasive than others. At the end of the day, either two things are happening. I say this every time I go live. I say, well, either two things are happening, right? I'm either not convinced or I just don't understand the proposition. So from a transcendental, if I position an absolute and I say, well, this is God, and this is how I can hold all my worldview, all of the metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology into account, logic or anything abstract numerical values, I say that it is tethered to that and is only possible with that in order. Do you refute the idea by positioning something in lieu of, so we call it golden calving or whatever, or do you just have a problem with the position completely or find it to be questionable?
Platonism and nominalism superior alternatives to, I guess, what you might call divine conceptualism, or the idea that like these things are accounted for by God, right? I would sooner take a Platonist or a nominalist view before I would take, you know, a theistic account.
Yeah. So explain to me the Platonist view and why it would render more persuasion for you.
Well, suppose we think seven exist in reality as much as tables and chairs.
Sure.
So
wait, are you saying seven would have ontology, or it would just have sevenness? I'm trying to keep up.
Right, seven would be a thing that exists.
Yeah.
It exists just as much as you and I exist, and it has properties like odd and primeness, and it doesn't really interact with our natural world or concrete reality, and we have this weird relationship about, you know, yet it's somehow accessible, or we interact with it in some kind of lesser way in terms of recognizing that it's required for statements like 7 plus 7 equals 14, that statement's made true by all sorts of things, but it implies the existence of abstract. So that would be a model, and you don't need theism to say that you could just say that numbers exist and they're necessary, and in their necessity they don't need a further explanation, and that's kind of the end of the story.
Yeah.
I mean, the alternative nominalism is just that, these are, one form of nominalism is fictionalism. There's a story of numbers, and that's all we need we just need a story to be able to go around and make statements about mathematics, right?
I think that you're not going to lean into that one, Danny?
I'm actually sympathetic to that view.
Yeah. Are you really? Why are you sympathetic to that view?
Well, it's sort of like how we talk about, stories or novels, TV shows, right? Like when we talk about, well, it's not true that Voldemort was in Hogwarts in the third book or something like that. That's false.
Yeah.
Right?
What's your argument for that, Danny?
Yeah. We'll read the book. But
Sure.
The idea there is that there's a sense of true as being true within a story.
Yeah.
And that's one form of nominalism.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's correct. I don't have any good objections against that kind of account.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you talk about these objections to and placing it in lieu of, if I'm gonna push back a little bit and say, gee, Danny, I think that you have to have a gratifying epistemic justification for everything you just said, and the grounding has to be easily demonstratable, because when you've appealed to these other things, I don't find them convincing. That gives me an easy way out to push back, but it's also going to give me less explanation if I just say, okay, Platonism sounds good, but when I follow it all the way to its end and it ends up into some sort of infinite regressive possibilities or causation, I would say that it ends in absurdity. And I get a lot of contention with that statement. What would be your contention?
That Platonism, usually when people say Platonism is absurd, they just don't see why they would need the extra ontological baggage of there being a realm that exists just as much as we exist, that doesn't interact with our world, that's abstract, the realm of abstract objects, right? They think it's crazy because it's like mini theism, right? It's like a heaven of objects, right? Where there's no God, right? But what was your original question again?
So when I present, if I say, hey, Danny, the only way you could come up with that understanding is okay. So because of my absolute that I've positioned, the only way you can come up with that understanding is that you're appealing to reason and logic that is coming forth from a reason and logical mind. So essentially then you say, oh, this is not necessary, and that's what you were answering just then. So I said, okay, why is that not absurdity? And then you started to answer that.
Well, it might be absurd. I don't take a strong position. It's sort of like this, that, and I'm not going to give any objections to the Trinity right now, at least. But you accept that Jesus is God, the Father is God, the Holy Spirit is God. They're not each other, and yet there's one God, right?
Yeah, three persons distinct from each other and one essence. And like we talked about earlier in the chat, that's the first thing I brought up with you, because you bring up logical inconsistencies with it, and I say, and my rebuttal to that was, this is for audience purposes.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to
that logic has to break down.
I'm not going to object to the Trinity right now. I'm just saying that you can accept those statements and not have a model for should be an account. What's the right account of moral properties? He said his internet was going to go crazy, so I'm going to pause.
Yeah, okay, Danny. But the problem there, though, is that statements such or whatever, those are undergirded by a worldview. See, so within a biblical worldview where there is a foundation and a coherent definition of something like truth, then the statement that the Trinity is true makes sense.
Yeah, but
Mob, you've got an echo.
I'm not contending with that right now. I'm just saying that you can accept what the Bible has to say. You can accept the Nicene Creed and not have a metaphysical model of the Trinity, and that there's not a problem with that, right?
How can you accept anything without like a background context? You're
Well,
just saying that you can. What does it even mean to say that 1 + 1 is 2 in a vacuum, or that the Trinity exists, or if there is no philosophical context that would undergird those things that provide all of that stuff?
sorry. So you're asking. So I was saying that you can believe in the Trinity, think think it to be coherent, understand the statements, and not have a model of the Trinity. Do we agree on that?
But a statement like that would be because of the biblical worldview. So those statements that the Trinity exists, even though you might not know it exhaustively, even that predication or the coherency within that statement exists because there is a worldview that undergirds those statements. Do you agree with that?
What do you mean by a worldview undergird?
Like a philosophy of fact. I mean, you know this because you have a degree in
Yeah, but
philosophy, and you're like
let me
not
just
new to
say
these conversations and
the
all of that
term
stuff. So
the term worldview is not really rigorously used in professional philosophy. It's
yeah, I
like
can
a
define it for you, but I mean, this is where it gets disappointing because all of a sudden this just turns into a game of we don't know what terms mean. But yeah, like a worldview, Danny, would just be your fundamental beliefs about reality that are untested by the natural sciences.
my
I'm just
fundamental.
surprised. I'm just surprised that somebody who engages in these conversations as much as you do doesn't all of a sudden know what a worldview is when pressed. But that's okay.
Well,
That's
the
okay.
thing is that I understand what it means to say, "What's my worldview about abstracta," or "What's my worldview on just is everything in the same kind of genus, like natural or nature?" The thing is
Well,
that on my view, a worldview if you have a worldview, presumably there's things that you have a view or issues or problems that you have views about, and they're
yeah, that's
usually
why I added the context of specifically saying a philosophy of fact and asking you if statements like
what's a
that
philosophy of fact?
exist. Well, what is truth, Danny?
Like, how do I define it?
Yeah, what would that be?
Well, I define it in many different ways, right? There's truth in the sense of like true according
No,
to a
What
formal
what is
system.
your definition of truth? What does it
I
mean
don't
for
have
something to be
one.
true?
I don't have one. I think I lean towards pluralism. I think there are a lot of ways to define it.
So
I
is
don't
it
have an issue.
mysterious? Is it just a
No.
mystery? No? So you can like present and defend something? Like if I say that something is true, I'm referring to like a fact of the world that comports with the mind of God. And
Oh
so
yeah,
that
that's
would
not what
mean
I
that
mean.
it's
Yeah.
true. That would mean that it's true regardless of the mental states within the system.
Is God part of the system?
Yeah, God would be outside of the system. Yeah.
What system is that?
Yeah, that would be the biblical worldview.
God is outside the biblical worldview.
Well, no, God would be the foundation of the biblical worldview. And again, I'm
Then he is
that's
part of the
fine.
system.
That's fine if you want to press me on that, but I've yet to be presented with because I was asking you and I've yet to get an answer, but that's okay. I mean, if you don't have one,
Well,
if you
I
can't
can give
talk
you.
about truth without punting to mystery, then I just don't know how that you would be qualified to even talk about things like whether or not the Trinity is problematic, or whether or not there's an apple on the table, or what an apple even is.
Can you repeat
Well, there's two
your
things here.
what
There's
your definition of
two things
worldview
to
was? Because
say.
I really want to hear
Let
that
me
again.
let me finish. Wait, let me respond to that really fast. There are two things to say. The first thing is I was in the process of defining it. I said there's true within a system, and then you cut me off.
Yeah, what would
The
that
second
be though?
thing,
You're just saying that I said what is truth, and you're
you're
like,
still
well,
cutting
it's
me off.
this thing.
It's no
Hey,
wonder you don't understand because you cut me off. But go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
hey,
So it's
Redefine and Danny. Look, I don't mind the exchange. In fact, I like it, but I would like an equal exchange where everyone gets an opportunity to respond. Danny, go ahead and respond. I'd like to hear what you have to say. And Redefine, I want to hear what you have to say too. Let's just keep it civil, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I
yes,
apologize
I'll try to
for
be quick.
cutting you off.
So I don't. I think there are multiple ways of defining truth. I think in some cases correspondence theory serves our purposes. There's senses of truth, though, like in logic, that I think correspondence theory doesn't seem as good, right? I think that we can understand true as within a formal system. Like the system of, let's say, intuitionistic logic stipulates what's true and what's not, and you can, derive truth from whatever posited axioms or whatever that are given in the system, right? So there's different truth. I'm not inclined to think that there's one all be all definition of, or one quote unquote true definition of truth. Last thing, you can know what something is and not be able to define it. There are all sorts of words that you don't know how to define, but I'm quite confident you know what they are.
Yeah, but if we're going to talk, so for example, like when I asked you what truth is, it seems like you punted to mystery, and then you said, well, you just kind of make it up as you go. I know that's a paraphrase, but I believe it's not a misrepresentation. You're like, well, if I feel, if I wake up,
I feel like it is.
If I wake up on Tuesday and I'm talking to somebody, I'm just going to punt over here to this mysterious thing that's based on axioms, which are just, mysterious things that we're calling fact or beliefs in the world that are unjustified, but I'm going to base the entire structure of my knowledge on those.
That's not what he said. That is a complete misrepresentation of what he's saying.
No, that's what you said. You said
no,
truth
it
is
isn't.
based
No,
on.
it isn't.
No,
it isn't.
it's more
On
like
axioms. If you could tell me maybe what an axiom is. Is an
you
astified
want to
something that's unjustified? Is an axiom something that's believed to be true without any context undergirding it?
So an axiom in logic? You're asking for a definition of what axiom means in logic?
Yeah, well, in epistemology, the way that you invoked it.
So
You invoked it.
in logic, like in logic, there's these starting truths, right? There's these statements that are posited as being true within the system. So, for instance, in classical logic, there's the LEM, the law of the middle, right? That's understood as being true within the system. And so, if you accept that system, you're committed to that being true.
Yeah, but again, when I say that something is true, such as the law of identity, I mean something entirely different than you. I wouldn't say that that's axiomatically or mysteriously true. So, because I asked you if when you're invoking something such as any law of logic, classical law, or whatever it is, and you immediately invoke this word truth again, but then your definition of truth is that, well, it's just a belief. It's just like mental state. Which is that subjective?
So the question is what? What's the question?
Yeah, when you talk about truth, you're just saying, well, I just embrace these axioms. I don't really know much about it. It's just, beliefs that I have apparently arbitrary or what?
No. I'm not saying any of that, right? I'm just saying that if you're a pluralist, there's not one quote unquote true definition of truth, right? I mean, there are many. It just kind of depends on the context, right? Now, there might be, if I say, "Hey, look, it's not true that you have gas, that you have gas in your car," right? That I might be working with a correspondence theory there. I'm fine to say that it's correspondence. But when I say like the law of identity is true, I don't think I'm talking about correspondence theory of truth, right?
What would you be talking about when you make a statement such that A is always A, and it could never be its negation? Like, what justification would you have for even invoking something like that?
Well, the best I would have is I don't know what it means to say otherwise.
But that doesn't. But you want to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was finished. Go ahead.
Yeah, but then you want to turn around and say that it comports with the reality. So, like, the best you have is to say that like I have an opinion about stuff.
No, I don't want to say that.
You wouldn't want to say that. So it does comport with reality?
No, I'm saying I brought that up to show you that there's a sense of truth that doesn't seem to lend itself to the correspondence theory of truth. Well, because I don't want to say that A equals A corresponds to reality. I don't.
But you do if you want to say that there's like something like the law of identity in the world, and you want to talk intelligibly about an apple. You want to say that there's this category, which again, I don't know if you guys were talking about Platonism or why something like that is necessary. When you invoke an apple, you're invoking something that's both abstract and concrete, if we want to use those words. I don't know what it means to say that you and I are not talking about a specific apple right now in the world, but we're talking about this category. right? You want to say something like that and say that that the apple has identity and identity over time. But how would you justify something like that if you want to
Well,
say it's
I
true?
wouldn't predicate the term identity to the thing, right? Like, I mean, it has identity. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't
I'm just
either.
saying that there are logical axioms that I don't think I understand truth there in terms of correspondence. Right now, if you want to go the realist route and say that A equals A corresponds to some form or proposition in the realm of Plato's heaven or whatever, the realm of forms or whatever, the Platonic realm. Uh, okay, I mean, that's a conversation we could have.
I'm sorry, I'm just not getting it. I'm just not getting a direct answer to my question.
I thought I did.
Oh, well, yeah, I want to. So, I'm asking you what justification you have for invoking something like the law of identity.
Well, the reason why I accept the law of identity is I don't know what it means to say otherwise.
But that's not what I asked. I didn't ask if you accept it. Like, yeah, you accept it, but from your worldview, I want to know what justification you have. You're just saying,
I just
I
told
don't
you.
really know. It's just mysterious. So,
No, no.
maybe
Did you hear me say that the alternative is unintelligible?
Right? Yeah. No one's disputing that. Yeah.
Well,
If not,
that's all I have as justification.
Right. So yeah, we both agree that the law of identity, we would say, is a necessary precondition for intelligibility. But when I ask you how, from your worldview, you can make sense of something like that, you're just like, well, I don't know. I guess I can't explain reality without the mind of
No,
God. And
that's not what I said,
I'm
though.
perfectly happy with you
No, but that's not what I
making that
said.
concession. Well, then maybe you can make sense of it for me
But I
really
didn't say
quick.
that. Redefine. I just didn't say that. I said
Well, I'm
this.
asking if you can though. So could you? Like, because that's the answer. I just want to know, like, because you guys, maybe you atheists are really onto something that I'm missing, and I'm like, well, shoot, because we can talk about an apple intelligibly if God exists, but it doesn't seem like you can do that without punting to mystery on the terms of your worldview.
But I never invoked mystery. Do you remember what I said?
You're saying that it's just like it exists necessarily, but
No,
you
I
didn't
didn't
give
say
me a
that.
line
I'll
of
say it for the third
reasoning.
time. I'll say it for the third time.
Please do.
Please get the word, these three words, or the alternative is unintelligible.
Right, yeah, we agree. We agree that the law of identity is necessary for intelligibility.
No,
We
that's not
agree
what I
with
just
that.
said. That's not what I just
But
said.
that alone
That's not what I
doesn't
said.
mean. Help me understand what I'm missing here, because I think I'm
You
missing
know,
it,
what do you
Are we
think I
obviously.
meant
assuming that
by?
God fixes this
I'm
problem? Are
saying
we
that
assuming that God fixes
to
that
say
problem
that
anyways?
if I'm proposed with either thinking that A is A or that A is not A. Now I think to say that A is like the cat is not the cat or redefine is not the redefine. I don't know what that means, right? And on that basis, do I accept something like a principle that A is A?
Right. Yeah. Again, like, so we both agree, but just saying that you have like a really strong opinion towards something because it makes intelligibility possible, that's not actually explaining to anyone why it makes sense, right? You want to say that this principle comports with reality.
No, I don't want to say that.
Oh, it doesn't. So when we're talking about an apple, we don't really know what that is.
No.
No, it does. What is it? What is an apple?
What does that have to do with A equals A?
Well, if we just fill in the blank there and say that A, could be an apple on the table, or Danny in the room, or this I that is thinking, whatever that might be. If that's true for the apple, that's true for everything that exists. So on the biblical
I don't think
worldview,
I mean, when I say something like unicorns are unicorns, am I talking about reality?
yeah, I would believe that you're making when you
What am I
say
referring
that.
to?
Yeah, well, you're referring to something, even if that
What?
something is a mental state. Okay, but when you
I'm
want to
referring
talk
to a mental
about,
state?
well,
When
you're
makes you
either
say that?
referring. Yeah, wait. So are you referring to more than a mental state when you talk
I'm not
about a
referring to
unicorn?
anything. That's precisely the
Wait, so
point.
so when so when you refer to a unicorn, you're not referring to anything.
No,
That's not a mental
first of all,
state. That's not.
I don't think there are but I don't think there are
Okay,
unicorns.
is that
Do
a
you
mental
believe
state?
wait, do you believe in unicorns or something? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. This is
The
bad. So, Danny, Danny, when you
Well,
invoke a
I'm not the one that believes in unicorns.
when you invoke something such as a unicorn, is that is that not a mental state?
What do you mean invoke?
I just feel like I feel like you're getting all over the place. But let's bring it back. Let's focus. So as a Christian, when I say that truth is that which comports with the mind of God, God created the world that in a way that it can be rationally understood. Things like an apple has its identity secured in the mind of God. We're thinking God's thoughts after God. You're like, well, I don't really like any of that stuff. And I'm like, cool. So when you invoke this law of identity, for example, that's a necessary precondition of reality, it sounds to me like you're just saying, hey, look, it's really important that you give me this. Just don't ask me much about it. If you're saying more than that, then
I'm just about the law of identity. What I'm saying is very simple.
yeah.
You're asking me why I accept the law of identity. I'm saying that I don't know what it would mean to deny it, and so that's precisely why I accept it.
Yeah, I mean, I could just say that about God. Do you accept that God exists because I don't know what it would mean to deny it? You'd be like, hold on, you got some explaining to do. But when
Well,
I
you don't
say
know
that
what it
to
means to say
you,
God
you're
doesn't
kind of like,
exist.
well, don't ask hard questions or else I'll kind of tap dance. But that's okay.
Wait, but
It's
that's
fine. I get
if you don't
it,
know
Danny. I
if you
get
don't
it.
know what it means, if you don't know what atheism means, then how can you object to it?
Yeah, but that it doesn't follow that because Danny doesn't know what it would mean to deny something that therefore that mental state that Danny has, that neurological.
I don't think I was making it like a.
I'm sorry. I'm getting a phone call that's really important. But thanks for having me up.
Hey, no
No,
problem,
no need.
Redefine. Thank you for coming.
Come back, man.
The goat of strawmen.
All right.
He is the
Well,
absolute worst. I think he might be number one of all the people
He's
I've ever
pretty
hold
bad.
encountered.
on a second.
Yeah,
Hold on a
he's the
second.
worst person.
Tupac, I have not invoked you. Tupac!
What's up, man?
It's like you can have a real conversation with Constantine, but I don't think like it's hard to talk to Redefine. I don't. It's like
I tell you what, man. Tupac, does that baby have a job yet?
It needs to.
Because Tupac, if that child does not have a job, I just want to know what type of environment are you suggesting that he goes into that everything's just going to be given to him? I
Well,
just don't understand that.
she's a she, so she's gonna get like.
But you know what I meant.
better, so.
I mean, it's all fluid now anyway. Hey, so listen, Hatem, one of you've been on the panel for a
Hatim.
while. You hadn't Hatim. I'm sorry, Hatim. Um, yeah, okay.
Wait, Danny, you
Listen,
remember
you put the
Redefined
wrong
or?
emphasis on the wrong syllable.
I
Uh,
remember him.
I want to ask you something, Danny.
Of course, I do. Yeah, yeah. What's up?
I heard some things that you mentioned during that exchange. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I heard some things you mentioned during that exchange that I want to, I don't know if push back yet or just ask
Okay.
questions. So it sounds like I heard you say that you're a pluralist. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the correct view. I think defining truth, right? Like there's we that's a term, and we use that in various contexts. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are multiple ways of correctly using the term and within our linguistic practices.
Yeah. And so if I say that you're just redefining everything to fit whatever proposition in which you're elucidating on, do you think that would be fair?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I can ask, how so?
Well, look, I try to give an example. Like when I say that it's not true that you have any gas in your car, right? Then I feel like I am trying to talk about reality. But when I am accepting inference rules or a formal system or logical axioms, it's kind of hard to understand what it would mean to say, like modus ponens, for example, like comports to reality. I mean, like, what is it? I mean, what is that supposed to mean exactly?
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is you're making you're making a statement and elucidating on a concept within reality, and then asking how does it concur with reality. Am I wrong?
Well, concur with. I mean, what is it like when we say that A is A? do you feel like we're talking about something in reality, like something in particular, or a group of
Yeah,
things?
if we say A is A, we're definitely speaking to the nature of reality, right? So we're saying, and so let me ask you this though: with that A is A and this contradiction mechanism that you're utilizing, would you say God world, not God world, is a true dichotomy?
Sure.
All right. Now, are there any in betweens? And if there aren't in betweens, is that simply just verbal camouflage?
Either God does exist or it's not the case that God exists. So yeah, there's
All
no
right.
in between.
Okay. Now, it sounds to me, Danny, when you use pluralism, it gives you a lot of flexibility to move in and out of definitions, which gives you an advantage to the semantics in which you're utilizing.
But you're probably a pluralist too, right?
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't say unicorns having horns is something that comports to reality, because there are no unicorns that you're aware of. Right?
Yeah. I haven't surveyed the entire earth for unicorns, right? Yeah. So I want to ask you this. I've heard you say this before, Danny. I'm really curious about it. You said it in the Anselm's ontological argument, it avoids modal collapse. How's that so?
And are we talking about, wait, modal collapse is usually relevant to,
Yeah, I moved the subject along because my question got answered about pluralism. Like, in
oh,
other words,
are we talking about,
I heard your definition of pluralism. I accepted it. Now I'm moving on to something else that I've heard you say before. Because remember, I invited you here because I wanted to ask you a few things, right? Okay. Does he want to come up?
Do you want him up, Daddy?
I
I
mean, I
don't
don't have
care.
a pro. Yeah. So I mean, here's the deal. I've got like 8 atheists in
Maybe
the
Monkey
room and
Boy
one
can talk
Christian
to him.
panel. He hasn't
Maybe,
requested, so
maybe
he hasn't
if,
he hasn't requested at all. So
I
if he
think
requests, I'll
Tupac
bring him up.
enjoys that more.
Yeah. Okay. Here's Redefine.
yeah, Monkey Boy.
I guess he dropped down. Yeah. So I shift the conversation over because I got your definition of pluralism. I accept it. Now I'm just going to move on. So I've heard you say this before. Remember,
Uh-huh.
just for anyone who's joining in, I invited Danny, and I'm glad and gracious that he saw fit to come up on the panel. So the question I have is on a comment that you've made before in Anselm's argument that this max omni deity existing in all worlds does not suffer from modal collapse, and you were okay with that. Why is that? Or did I get the statement wrong?
Well, I don't remember talking about modal collapse and the ontological argument at the same time. So I just don't remember the context of me saying that. Usually when I talk about modal collapse, it's about the contingency argument.
Right. Okay.
Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking?
I've heard it being in the framework of the contingency argument, but you mentioned something about, and I could be wrong about this, about the ontological argument as presented by Anselm and it not being, and it having more explanatory power because it doesn't suffer from modal collapse. Let me drop someone down and I got to bring someone back up.
I might have misspoke or something.
You could drop me down, bro.
Who's you?
That's
No,
not
I
a
have to
modal
drop.
argument.
So, hold on a second. Figure this out. Redefine. I'm going to drop down. I'm going to bring back up. All right. There we go. Okay, there we go. See if it'll come back up. Yeah. Okay. So when you say that, if I say to you, Danny, if I say this max omni prime mover exists within the confines of my mind and exists in all other possible worlds, what's your pushback with that?
Well, to say that if he exists in every possible world, it sounds like you're saying that God is necessary. I guess my view of necessity, though, is kind of like something that's stipulated, at least logical necessity. It's like stipulated by the formal system that you've adopted. And I don't accept any formal systems that take God to be existent in all possible worlds. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way that you could understand it.
Yeah. Do you push now when you say brute fact? When you're pushing brute fact as this necessary truths, does that remove the need for justification?
Does it? Well, to say that some fact is not explained, well, you could still be justified in accepting that fact, even though it's unexplained. So those are two different notions, as I understand it.
Can you explain that?
Well,
How are there's two different notions?
Yeah, so imagine God creates a random number generator, and he gives it to you, and it produces a new number every minute between 1 and 10, and it's random. There's no explanation as to why you get one number over a different number. And so you look at the device, and it shows the number 3. I think you'd be justified in thinking that the random number generator produced a 3 rather than any other number, even though it's a brute fact that you got 3 rather than 4.
Yeah. And when you say brute fact, it sounds like you're just asserting a truth from absurdity and just saying that it's necessary because it's necessary. Am I wrong in thinking that's circular, or is there a different way of understanding it?
I guess all I mean by brute is like it's not explained.
Yeah, if something's random for any given number in a random generator, there wouldn't be an explanation why it's 3 rather than 4. It just is 3.
Now, of course, I got to ask you, when you perceive this knowledge to be true, what's the measuring stick that you're holding up to say, this is absolutely the standard versus this is absolutely not? Because if it's asserting just brute necessity, I got to ask about the senses and reasoning that you're using to assert it. So is it an appeal to maybe a social construct, or is there something more to it that exists logically that I'm not understanding?
Are you asking me how do I know that certain facts are brute? And
I guess so, yeah.
Oh, well,
Listen, Danny, I got to tell you something, Danny. In this drawer, I keep all kinds of word salad. I just dish it out. You're just going to have to sort through it and pick out the truth and then answer the best of your ability.
Okay. So I actually only have potential candidates for brute facts. I actually don't know any in particular.
Go ahead. Say that again.
I don't know any particular brute facts. I only know potential facts that might be brute, but I don't have any concrete or particular examples for you. So I can say this is how I know it.
Yeah. So when Redefine was saying that you kind of appeal to a mystery, I'm sorry, he's back. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Danny,
just where we left off, Redefine is I was asking him to kind of flush out what he means by brute fact, and then I was trying to discern how it was or was not mystery and how he invoked it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wasn't.
I think it's a fair question, right? I mean, if it's brute and it seems to me, Danny, like there's sort of a mysterious enclave that you're using to support it, and it's either that I just don't understand it or it's not persuasive. One of the two things are happening. I just wanted to figure out which one.
Oh, so you're persuaded that everything is explained to the T, right? That's what you want to say.
Well, we're talking about like fundamental justification, and yeah, so like to say that something's a brute fact is just a punt of mystery, and it's kind of a performative contradiction, because by calling something a fact, be it mysterious, if it's how do you know that that's not something that can be overturned? Like maybe you would find some new data that would overturn this thing you're calling a fact. So it just gets kind of weird to call anything a fact.
No,
I take brute and mysterious to be two different terms. I don't use them the same way.
Well, make a meaningful
BRB, I gotta go get a soda.
Make a meaningful distinction there.
Yeah, something might be mysterious and have an explanation.
Well, if it has an explanation, then it's not contextless, right? So then we wouldn't be talking about a brute fact that is a contextless fact. So that really wouldn't make it. That's not a meaningful distinction.
But Danny, I think he might be confused with like having an explanation and knowing the explanation.
Is that what
he's confused with knowing something and knowing something exhaustively.
Danny, I think he might be understanding explanation as you know the explanation, because like it doesn't have an explanation. Maybe he's thinking about we just don't know the explanation. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. I think Danny would be confusing knowledge of something like exhaustive knowledge with just something in general. But to say that something's just a brute fact is a brute fact is a moot fact. It's a contextless fact. You're just inserting it with no rhyme or reason undergirding it.
Well, no, I don't think Danny has
context though.
Danny has not done that yet.
I don't think I've asserted any particular facts as being brutes. So.
But you can have a
the law of
justification that something's brute.
the law of excluded middle. Isn't that
Hey,
a brute fact?
Monkey Boy, can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
There's like this confusion going on between bruteness and like whether one has a justification to believe something.
Yes.
Bruteness
there's
is
not.
like an
Yeah, and I think the
it's a type of
confusion.
metaphysical property where something lacks a sufficient explanation.
No, I think the one who's confused is the one who's asserting a brute fact and then saying that there is some context undergird. Either there's context surrounding this.
Redefine. No one has asserted a brute fact.
Either this. Oh, let me just finish my thought. Either there's like some broader context undergirding this thing that you're, such as the law of identity, or there's not. So which is it?
What was the question?
Either there's something undergirding this thing that we're calling the law of identity, or there's not.
What do you mean undergirding?
Yeah,
What do you mean undergirding?
Yeah, I don't know what that
Yeah, like
means.
what does that mean?
Yeah,
I'm not so sure what you're saying either.
Redefine. I think what you're saying is supporting, right? When I hear undergirding, I'm thinking supporting, right? So does that flesh it out a little bit better? If I cash out on these facts that you're stating as brute without context or support, they evaporate without any fundamentalism or foundation from which they're predicated upon. That sounds good to me. And again, if you want more word salad.
What does it mean to support the law of identity?
Well, just some justification for its invocation, something that's not like a composition fallacy, maybe.
I speak silly goose.
Actions.
Yeah, so to invocate something would be to say that something is the case. Like I'm invoking that everything that exists metaphysically can never be its negation. I'm like, well, wait, was that revealed to you by like this omni deity that secures such a thing?
Is the case?
Or
is that what you're saying?
Or I've super happy that all you guys want to disagree, but you got to let me finish my thought so you can know what to disagree with, or else that's just bickering.
I'm not understanding what it is you're saying.
Yeah, so I can say it again. So and remind you, Monkey Boy, last time I came on your channel, all you did was call me names. Okay, same with Tube Socks, but that's fine. But once you listen, right? Do you know what it means to invoke something? And by the way, you guys should let Danny do the heavy lifting here. He's more competent than you. And I don't mean that to insult you, but isn't Danny?
Here's the deal. In all fairness, just for audience context, I invited Danny on last night. I didn't think he was going to respond. I'm glad he did respond. And the reason why I invited Danny on is I saw him on some other low bracketed lives, and they didn't let him talk. So I wanted to give him a chance and just let him talk. I'm interested in what you got to say, Danny, and I like it so far. I just got questions. That was the purpose of bringing you on the live. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think I'm more competent than Monkey Boy, number one. And number two, he's basically said what I've...
Monkey Boy Live, let me tell you something. Monkey Boy Logic threw me off of his live one day a long time ago because he said, he didn't argue with me, he just said, you're kind of boring. And then he dropped me. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, well, so well then let's
hurt my feelings, man.
Let's reform the argument, okay?
Sensitive, dude.
Yeah, well, he did the same to he had trouble, I guess, dialoguing with my argument. He handed me over to Jack, and Jack had trouble too, and then they just booted
Monkey
me.
Boy. I said, premise one, everything that begins to exist has a cause. He went, nope, click. He was done with it. He didn't want to hear no more of it.
Like the ontological argument and whether or not God is a necessary being. If Danny wants to say that, well, he doesn't see the necessity of a necessary being, that's fine if he can give an explanation for reality independent from invoking the mind of a necessary being. And by punting to mystery, you're not really qualifying that, right? If you're saying, hey, look, I don't see the necessity for a necessary being within my metaphysical scheme, cool, how do you explain, I don't know, the law of identity? You're like, I don't know, it's a mystery. Don't ask me hard questions, but there's no God. Well, I'm not satisfied. That's not doing philosophy. Go ahead.
What's the question?
Yeah, no, you said that you weren't that you don't feel that like the ontological argument, for example, posits that if a necessary being is necessary, then it would be the case necessary in all worlds. and you said, and this is a paraphrase, and please correct me, something along the lines is you don't see the necessity of a necessary being. But when I challenge you on something like the law of identity, it turns out that you can't explain reality without the necessary being. So you're not really justified in your objection that a necessary being isn't necessary. That's not word salad.
I'm not saying that necessary beings aren't necessary.
Okay. Well, then what would be the problem there with what would be the defeater for the ontological argument? Which isn't my argument. That's just something that I believe you were trying to address when I came in.
Well, I don't see why anyone should accept that it's possible that there's a necessary concrete being.
Because intelligibility is possible. How about that?
Okay, what's the next step? Because that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, so if intelligibility is possible, then those preconditions of intelligibility, those should be satisfied by the worldview, either predicating or right? No?
Okay,
so the
preconditions, fine, okay, and then what now?
Yeah. So the argument is then that there is only one worldview that can satisfy the preconditions for intelligibility.
Okay, but why would anyone accept that?
Because they want to pretend that there's no God, and they want to say, no, that's not true. I'm going to object to that transcendental argument and posit something more than mystery. That's why.
You're saying that people should accept that because of what? Why?
Because they want to offer a coherent worldview that can satisfy the preconditions. That's why. If that's not important to you as a philosopher or a student of philosophy, then that's fine. We'll accept a concession.
I think what's important is whether you have a sound argument or not. And it sounds like you're saying that there's only one view that's coherent, or one view that can account for that precondition or whatever. Yeah. And that we should all accept that because that one view is coherent.
Yeah,
or the impossibility.
Right. Yes, because there would be one thing that's metaphysically ultimate. Do you agree or disagree?
I don't see why anyone should accept that.
You don't see why someone should accept that there would only be one thing that's ultimate? I mean, that's just definitionally true. If it's the case that there is, well, what does it mean to say that there are two things that are ultimate? Would they both be then non-contingent?
Well, it doesn't follow.
Would they both be
that there's multiple?
What does ultimate even mean?
Yeah. So Danny, is there something that's like metaphysically second?
What does that mean?
Just something that exists metaphysically. Second, like derivative, non-contingently.
What does it mean to exist non-metaphysically?
This is cool. Yeah. So Danny, are there things that exist metaphysically?
By metaphysically, you mean like supernaturally?
Just exist. Just things that just exist.
Things exist, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are those things that exist contingent?
Sure.
If we call those things metaphysically derivative because they're contingent, doesn't it follow that? Huh?
Well, I don't know there are two different senses of contingent. One sense of contingent is that they didn't have to exist, right? They could have not existed. Maybe
that would be contingent.
Okay, but the other sense of contingent is like dependent on or something.
Yeah. Well, we can use both of those. Okay. Is there something within your system that's not metaphysically contingent by either one of those definitions?
In what sense? Sure.
By either one of them? Like what?
I'm fine to say there could be.
I didn't ask you if there could be.
Yeah, I'm fine to say that there are things in reality that are not explained.
That's not what I asked.
Oh, what were you asking?
Yeah, if there's something that's not metaphysically contingent.
Yeah, sure.
What would that be?
I'm not so sure.
Well, you said yes. So is it just
another
mystery?
I need someone to drop down so I can bring up Mason.
Well, think of this.
I mean, no offense, Danny, but this is sophistry, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's not like you can show that sophistry, but it's
I just did. I just asked you if there was something that exists.
I just did.
I just asked you if there was something that exists. You said yes. I said, what is it? You're like, I don't know. So then why'd you say yes? Why didn't you just say you didn't know?
It's just kind of stupid what you said. It's like, hey, are there any people in the White House? Yes. Well, who are they?
Look, You
Do
know,
you
you don't have to
understand the
call it.
analogy?
Yeah, you don't. Let's just assume that it's stupid. Can you just deal with it? Like, I'll
Yeah,
accept the
I just
insults,
explained the
right?
problem, right?
Yeah.
That
So let me ask you again: are there things that are metaphysically contingent? You said that there
sure.
are.
I
I
said,
said,
yeah,
is there anything that's not metaphysically contingent?
not
What was
meta.
it?
Yeah, I
What
already
was,
said yes to that question.
right. But when I asked you what it would
Oh,
be,
not metaphysically, like necessary things.
yeah.
Oh, I'm not inclined to say that they're necessary things.
If we're saying that that everything, so you believe that there's just this infinite regress of things,
I don't see how you get
No,
that from what I said.
because well,
he said he
well,
doesn't take a
if every yeah
position.
if everything's well, yeah, if you want to explain reality without God, you can't say, hey, there's all these things that are metaphysically contingent, but there isn't anything that's metaphysically primary from which all things derive and
Why
depend.
does it have to be an
That's
infinite regress? It
that's
could be like a
fine.
circular chain.
Yeah, but because there's something metaphysically second, there must be something
Redefine.
that's metaphysically first.
Redefine. Think about it like this. Let's say you woke up in a cold sweat.
No
And
response to that one?
yeah, let's say you woke up in a cold sweat and you didn't know where you were in the room.
I'll take that concession too.
And somebody asks you, where are you? Like, the phone picks up, rings, and somebody asks you, where are you? You pick up, you say, I don't know, I'm in a room somewhere. And then they ask you, how did you get there? You're like, I don't know. Or where are you exactly? I don't know. Right? So you know some facts, but you don't know like the origin of the facts or what explains those facts or what
Yeah, we're
the
talking
fact
about
is related to.
We're talking about fundamental facts,
What I'm saying is,
such as that there things like that there's one more than one mind, such as Danny invoking this thing called I without arguing that the I that he's invoking is not the result of two or more unified um, beings or whatever it might be.
what I'm
What
trying to
makes a
explain to
fact
you.
fundamental?
What makes a fact fundamental? Because there would be nothing undergirding it.
As in, like, no explanation?
Correct. Well, it depends on what we're calling a fact. If we're calling a fact just some mystery of the world, saying, hey, there's no God, I'm like, well, great. How do you know? Well, it's just there's all these mysterious things. I'm like, well, you're not doing a good job of convincing me that there's no God. But yeah, so if we're invoking a fact, we're talking about something that's objective, mind independent. If you want to say that if something is a fact of the world, I'm going to ask you if that's going to be true, whatever that state of affairs is, or that thing that you're invoking is true. Should there be no minds on earth existing? If all minds on earth cease to exist, was this thing ever a fact to begin with?
Would you mind giving your argument for God existing again?
That intelligibility is possible.
Okay, and so I
Do you agree with
granted.
that? Is
How does that show
intelligibility
that?
okay? Does intelligibility have preconditions?
Wait, but now you're asking me questions. I'm asking what your
Yeah,
argument
yeah.
is.
Well, so are you asking me for a deductive argument?
Whatever argument you have, it doesn't have to be deductive. It could be
Oh, great. It
inductive.
can be transcendental.
I don't know what. I'm not even sure what
Wait,
a
it can be transcendental.
transcendental.
Oh,
I
all
don't know
right.
what it
Well,
means for an argument to be transcendental. I just want to hear an
all right.
argument.
Yeah. Well, maybe when you know what that is, then that's why I say maybe you should let Danny do the heavy lifting.
So long as
So
it
yeah,
is
like
an argument, I'm happy to hear it.
a transcendental argument. Deduction presupposes transcendentals, things like logic or whatever it might be. So when you ask me for an argument, you're like, hey, just give me an argument. I'm like, cool, what kind of argument? You're like, well, I don't even know what an
Well,
argument
argument here
is.
means set of
Wait,
statements.
hold on,
that
real
illustrate
quick.
Then I'm like, all right, well, maybe let Danny do the heavy lifting if you don't know what an argument is.
Did I ever say I don't know what an argument is? Yes or
Do
no?
you know what a transcendental argument is?
Did I ever say that I don't know what an argument is?
Yeah,
Yes
you
or
said
no?
you don't. Yeah, you said I asked if I could give you a transcendental argument. You said you didn't know what that was.
But that's a
Because
different.
deduction. Hold on,
But this
bud.
is a different claim.
Hold on, bud.
You said that I said I don't know what an
Hold on,
argument is.
bud.
Now you're saying the correct thing, which is I said I don't know what a transcendental argument is.
Hold on, buddy.
So you agree that you said something false, right?
Hold on, buddy.
Mason,
No,
give him an opportunity, will you?
yeah. If you're following the conversation, Mason, and I trust that you are, we're talking about things that are fundamental. Okay, deduction isn't fundamental. Deduction presupposes transcendentals. So when we're talking about things that are fundamental, and you ask for an argument, I'm not going to give you a deductive argument because deduction is not fundamental. Transcendentals are. Okay.
Okay,
So
but
you
you
don't.
would agree that, real quick, you would agree that if somebody were to say that I asserted that I don't know what an argument is, they would have been saying something false, right?
But listen, I'm not. I'll walk you through it again, really carefully and
Wait,
politely. I'm not trying to.
that was just a direct
Yeah,
question. It's just yes or
Hey,
no.
let me answer your
real quick,
question.
Mason. Real quick, Mason. Man, I love you to death. I like talking to you. I invited Danny up. I like hearing what he's got to say. And if it's okay, man, I'd like to reconvene with Redefine or Danny
I'm
or
not
me. And
going, Constantine. I'm not going anywhere. We have time for this, so I'm not.
you're okay with that?
So
Yeah, because here's the deal.
yeah.
You're the invited guest. I got to deal with these guys every
Look,
day coming in here, and
I'm not going
it's
anywhere. So
like
let
a
them
punching
finish.
bag.
Well,
Let,
well,
they can finish, and I'll be here right after. All right.
okay. Well, all right. So Mason, let me answer your question again. So in
It
the
was yes or
context
no.
of,
It was a yes or no question.
so I'll answer your question the way I feel like answering your question.
What do you
But
think my
I'll answer.
question? Before we go on, what is
Mason,
my question? What is my question?
Mason, calm down. You asked me if I misrepresented your statement
That was
when
not
you
my
said
question.
you don't know what an argument is, and I explained to you again that
That
in the
wasn't the question.
context, you got to stop interrupting me, bud.
But that was not my question.
I know, but
Mason.
Constantine,
Mason, let's
it's
do
not cool,
better.
bro.
Let's do
It's not
better.
cool when somebody just blatantly disregards questions, bro.
So, in the
Okay, so
context of,
Mason, reformat the question. We'll hold him to
The
the fire. But
question,
I've been seeing an answer. I just want to know if it's
if
fleshed out or
somebody,
not.
okay,
I'm satisfied with the answer. I just want to know if you
sure.
are. Yeah.
Yes, no. So here's the question: yes, no, or I don't know. If somebody were to have
Stop that,
said
Mason.
that, if somebody were to have said that I asserted that I don't know what an argument is, would they have said something false? That is a yes, no, or I don't know.
that's a A/B fallacy. Okay, it's not a true. Your answer is not a true dichotomy. You're saying a yes, no, or I don't know. I can insert something that is neither. Okay, in the context, as I have already explained to you, in the context of fundamental arguments, you don't know. You conceded that. You said you don't know what transcendental arguments are. Transcendental arguments are foundational or fundamental arguments. That's what we're discussing here. If you don't know what that was, then in the context of fundamental arguments, you don't know what that is. Okay? I'm not trying to be
Some
mean. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to insult you.
need
I'll
this
just
monologue
accept.
part.
I'll accept that you're far more learned than me, but I'm just pointing out something
I don't
again.
need the
Okay?
monologue part. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's an answer,
I'm
right? It's neither yes, no, or I don't
no,
know.
no. So I'm happy to I'm happy to treat that as everybody saw as a dodge of the question, and we can move on.
It's a
Okay.
direct
So
answer, bud.
I'm taking an argument. So I'm happy to treat that as a
Okay.
dodge. So I'm happy.
Yeah.
Come on,
So I'm
Mace.
happy
Come
to
on, Mace.
excuse me. So I'm happy to treat that as a
Okay.
I'm happy to treat that as a clear
We'll
dodge of
just
my
go. We'll go
question.
with that. We'll
So
go
I'm
with
happy
that.
to treat that as a clear. So I'm happy to treat that as a clear dodge of my question, and we can
We'll
move on.
grant. Hey, Mace,
But
we're gonna grant you. We're gonna grant you the dodge for progression today.
okay.
So I'm taking an argument to be a sequence of premises which lead to a conclusion. So they support a conclusion in some way. Okay. So I'm asking if you have that where the conclusion is God exists.
So you're asking me for a deductive argument?
No, my definition, under my definition that I just provided, it need not be a deductive support.
Yeah, so we can say like, so I believe that you're asking me for an I'm sorry, a deductive style of argument, which if you
No,
understood, Mason, you got to
I
stop
just,
it.
you just,
I'm
I
not interested
literally
in
just said I'm
talking to
not
you.
doing that.
He's
I'm not
not doing
interested
that.
in talking to you.
I
You're not letting me.
literally just said that's not what I'm doing.
Does someone want to,
Redefine. You asked him, are you asking for deduction?
yeah.
He said
Like
no.
if
I don't
this,
know what more do you want than that?
right. Hold on, folks. I just don't want to be interrupted. So Mason, you can correct me and tell me that I'm dodging and all of that stuff. But you gotta let me finish my thought first, and then you can point out that I'm totally dodging you. Okay. It seems to me that you're asking me for a deductive type of argument. And I've already made it clear, if you understood my last response, you would realize that I didn't dodge you. I actually explained to you that I'm not giving a deductive argument, I'm giving a transcendental argument. If you knew what a transcendental argument was, then we probably wouldn't be having this problem. So you should let Danny do the lifting here, not you, but that's fine.
Do you have a sequence of premises that lead to the conclusion that God exists?
Yeah, is that
Through
is
and
that
that
is that? Yeah, I do, I do.
okay, yeah,
But am I
okay,
am I am
perfect,
I
perfect. What are the
obligated? Am I
premise?
right? Am I obligated to provide that type of argument?
Come on, Geppetto, let him pull your strings.
Okay, perfect. So you do.
What is your argument that I am obligated to provide you with that style of argument? And then we can just play what's the argument game, because this is kind
Yeah,
of what you guys do.
I
What's
never
the
claimed,
argument, buddy? What's your
I
argument for
never,
that?
yeah, so I never claimed anyone was obligated to do anything. You could run away if you wanted,
I
but
was running away.
the question is, so given that you said that you do have those premises that lead to the conclusion that God exists, what are those premises?
Yeah, we would say that. So just to be clear, and I'll give you that, but just to be clear, like your posturing game is really high, but your following game isn't. You should balance
Rambling will
those
not
out.
work.
Okay, and your interruption game is super juvenile. Like you really should learn how to control yourself there. But so if I was to say, okay, fine, I accept what you've requested, even though you've conceded it's not something that's obligatory. Okay, so I could just point my finger and laugh,
Rambling won't
but
work.
yeah, so I could accept what you said, and instead of, or I could point my finger and laugh. But the argument would be something along the lines of that any inference or active predication presupposes the absolute unity and diversity that is satisfied by the triune God of Christianity. So that would be
Okay.
something like premise one. And
Yeah.
you can say it right. And here's just folks, here we go. Here's the prediction. What's the argument for that? Right? That's what we get. This is where it's stalemate. Hold on, let me do it with my nose pinged. What's the argument for that? Because they don't
Rambling
know
will not
what,
help,
right?
by the
Because
way.
they don't want so the argument for that is I'm making a transcendental argument. The premise two, which you're going to need to consider before you say, what's the argument for that? Okay, I know my rhetoric game. I'm trying to increase my rhetoric game, but
Rambling will not help you.
the argument there would be that that denials of premise one are acts of predication. Okay, therefore, the triune God of
Therefore.
Scripture exists. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So
Does that work?
sure. Yeah.
Wait,
So
does that work? You like that?
yes, you've given an argument. I
Okay.
appreciate you for actually giving an
Stacking
argument. I
syllogisms
appreciate
like
that.
Jenga.
Right.
Okay.
You
So
got it.
now my question is, so the first premise I believe was that every act of predication requires the Christian triune God to exist.
Presupposes. Yeah,
And then the question is, yeah.
Hold on,
And the question is,
presupposes.
what is the argument
Right.
for that claim?
Right. Yeah. What's the argument for that claim? Yeah. And the argument is that intelligibility has. So first of all, again, this is why you should let Danny do the heavy lifting. This is also, by the way,
Rambling will not help you.
yeah. Stop interrupting me, bud. If look, if you keep interrupting me,
When you're done with
I'm
this
just not
ramble,
going
I'll
to
ask
be.
you the same question.
This will be the last time. Okay. If you keep interrupting me, I'm just going to concede that all you can do is posture. Okay. But the reason why Danny isn't jumping in is because he understands that this argument works, and to say what's the argument for that is presupposing another level that undergirds an argument, which is a fundamental argument. Do you understand that? Do you understand the problem there?
For the record,
So the predicament
for the
that
record,
you're
I don't
in
think any of that.
is
That's-
you're asking for an argument that undergirds what I am invoking as a fundamental argument. Do you see that? Do you see why that's a problem? Or do you want me to unpack that for you?
When you say fundamental argument, it
Wait,
sounds
hold on,
like
wait,
it's-
hold on, wait, hold on. Oh,
Yeah, go
you're
ahead.
done rambling? Okay, what's the argument that every predication presupposes the Christian God?
Yeah.
Gotta love old mates, man. Gotta love mates.
This is like, you guys, this is the best. If you're a Christian listening to this, you should be so satisfied and encouraged that this is the best that they can do. Okay. So again, the argument there, so you're asking me to undergird a foundational argument, which just shows that you don't really understand. Okay. But the argument there is that because intelligibility requires certain presuppositions or preconditions that need to be satisfied, and know that the Christian worldview is the only worldview that can satisfy those preconditions. Therefore, the Christian worldview is true. In the same way, okay, in the same way that when Danny tried to suggest that like logic No, I don't. I take that back. I take that back. So in the same way that for somebody to try to deny the transcendental truth of logic, they would have to use it in order to reject it, thus proving that it is necessary, a necessary precondition. Okay. So the proof of logic is that one must use it even to deny it, and the same would be acts of predication that presuppose preconditions that are only satisfied. Notice that's a positive argument, that are only satisfied by the Christian worldview. And you will note, last thing, I know I said a lot. I'm rambling. Okay. I know I said a lot. The last thing I want to point out is that you're not going to.
Because here's the deal, Redefine. I got to give Mason that much ramble, bro. I got it,
And that's
dog.
fine.
I
I'm
just got
very
it.
concise. I
Well,
don't need that much time. He
yeah.
can ramble
Well,
if he wants. I'll just.
I'm just giving a
You're
precise.
being very gracious, Mace. You're being very gracious.
Just the last thing. I'm just trying to be precise so we don't have to fall into this infinite regression of what's your argument, because that's all where it's going to go. It's just going to be this infinite what's your argument for that. Okay. But what I just want to point out for everyone listening, that the unbelievers, they will not present a worldview that they can defend. Okay. And this conversation is just going to end in this infinite regression of what's your argument for that. And that should make every Christian very confident. And that should also cause every critic of Christianity to pause and consider repenting to the God whose denial cannot be instantiated. Go ahead.
Okay, you done? Okay, yeah. So in your
Yeah, I'm done.
argument, in your argument, you had to premise that God is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. What is the argument for that?
I mean, I just gave you my explanation for that. But what
Well,
you can
I just
do,
heard the claim, and
yeah, what you can do is
the
you can,
premise
yeah,
in your
you can
argument. I didn't
engage
hear
with
your
it.
argument for
Right.
it.
Right. And this is the beautiful thing about the transcendental argument, is that you will not find a critic to engage with the argument.
When you're done rambling, I'll ask you the same
Right.
question, by the way.
Yeah. I know that's all. I know that's it. But it's
Mason, are you gonna say
Yeah.
what's the argument for that, man? Because that's kind of been called out. And I think
If
that
there's a
monologue is gonna give the
claim, if
argument
there's a
in the
claim like
premise. So Mason, I don't really
if
think that's fair, man.
if there's a claim that he makes that I dispute, of why would I not ask him for the argument? Of course.
Yeah, so can you okay,
argument's
do
in
this for me,
Creep and
Mason, so I can
P2.
keep up since I'm the slow boy on the panel. Can you call out which premise or which statement in the argument that you had a problem with? Because just saying what's your argument
Yes,
for that
I
seems
can
kind of
exactly.
bland
Yes.
and it
The-
may come off as disingenuous. Not saying that it
Yeah,
is,
so
it just
the
may come off
explicit,
as.
I already said this initially, the explicit premise I'm asking him to defend right now is the claim that God is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. That is the specific one I'm asking him to defend.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a counterclaim, as stipulated by premise 2, that predications, and even the predication of the denial of premise 1, denial of premise 1, or asking what's the argument for premise 1, those are predications. Okay, predications also require preconditions. So at this point, you're going to have to do more if you want to be like intellectually rigorous with us here on the panel. What you can do is you can explain why you don't accept premise 1, like, hey, look, Sam, that's my name, by the way. You're like, hey, look, Sam, I don't accept premise 1 because, like, I have this other worldview that can satisfy the preconditions. And then maybe I'll ask you about the law of identity, like I did Danny. And you could phone a friend or something. Like, you can engage with it. You could show me why I'm wrong. But just like infinitely asking what's an argument for that, that's problematic on its own terms, because I've given you a foundational argument. At some point, you're going to have to invoke an argument that is not undergirded by further argumentation. And that's where I'm at. So every time you say, what's the argument for that? Like, it should be obvious that it's just silly and it's a dodge.
It sounds like you're saying worldview comparison.
Yeah, it's a worldview juxtaposition. Thank you very much. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
so what's the argument for that?
Yeah, that was an interesting monologue. So nowhere in that ramble, nowhere in that ramble was an argument presented for the claim that God is the necessary precondition for intelligibility.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you 2 more tries. Okay.
Yeah.
This is try number 2. This is the second attempt. What is the argument that God is the necessary precondition for intelligibility?
Yeah, I mean, this again, like I really have nothing more to say. Either you can pony up and like
Yeah,
You
if I
provide
could
don't
me
have
just,
one,
if
so
I
you
could
don't have
just,
an
something,
argument.
or like, or
Mason,
you
if I could
can't.
just interject, Mason, if I could just interject, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like for you to say, I understand what you're propositioning for the necessary preconditions. However, in lieu of that, I position X, Y, or Z. This is why your position is wrong because of A, B, and C, and it very well may be whatever. But to continuously ask what's your argument for that during that monologue that Redefine was so gracious to give us, I don't know if it's genuine or not. I don't know if it's genuine or not. Would that be fair
I
if I
think
asked
it's
you to do
very
that?
genuine if somebody makes a claim that's disputed. I think it's very genuine to ask an argument for it, and more genuine to repeat the question when he just rambles and dodges it, right? So I'm just trying to
Right.
figure out
I
if
get you, but it seems like we're
Yeah.
going into a spiral. I'd like to. Here's what I want, Mason. I
there's
want the
no spiral. There's
conversation
no
to.
spiral.
I want the conversation to advance. So I'd like for you to
Well,
position an alternative rather than just saying what's your argument for that, what's your argument for that. But because that's going to push Redefine into
I
another
think we should
monologue,
just
which I
end it.
was
It's
I
like
was
Yeah.
your
satisfied.
redefine doesn't have an argument.
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
just, yeah,
if
you
he
could
has,
just,
I'm happy to end it here. If he has no argument, that's fine with me.
all
See,
these,
but here's the
all these,
problem, though. I heard an argument. I'm
I
asking, what is
didn't.
your
Did anybody
contention
else
with
hear
the
one?
argument? Then saying elucidate further on
What
the
was the
argument.
I did
argument?
not
I
hear a
want it.
single. I did not hear
what's
the
your
argument.
argument? What's your argument for that?
All right, we'll ask him again.
I'll tell you. I can
One
even
more
quote.
time.
You could be super
I can summarize
generous.
real quick. I can summarize what I think he said. What I think he said is that like he was talking about like a sort of worldview comparison where he instead of giving an argument, he was telling me, okay, he was kind of like, commenting about how atheists engage in this bad behavior, and then he said, well, what would be interesting, Mason, is if you posited like a contrary worldview and I critiqued it. But
Yeah.
none of that's given an argument. That's just saying that he doesn't like how atheists behave, and that's just telling me to forward like an alternative theory for him to critique. None of that's an argument for his claim.
Like when you try to feed like a child something like sauerkraut and
It's like
they
a
reject it, yeah, they
Jesus,
reject
here we
it,
go.
then typically the child is going to give you like some sort of explanation as to why. They're going to be like, no, because it tastes bad, or because it wasn't cooked by a German woman who like knows how to cook real good sauerkraut. They're going to respond. But notice again, so what imagine having all of these critics of Christianity on a panel, but not one of them can actually give a worldview that we can juxtapose to mine. Imagine that.
So, host, notice how he's not giving
Yeah,
an argument right now. Right now, he's just complaining that we won't propose a different theory.
Right. So we can say that what's the argument for that? But I'm going to point out again, okay, that for a fundamental argument, you got to end somewhere. And so all the critics need to do is simply provide a worldview that offers coherency for things
I
like.
think I see that as fair, Mace. I think
that's all.
Mace, here's the deal.
I'll just say this.
Maybe you can say that I'm just siding with Redefine because we share the same theology. But at the same time, I get that. That's fair too. But
I'll just say this. I'll just say this.
A proposition in lieu of. And
I'll just say this, and then we can. Yeah, we don't have to like keep looping. I'll just say this. Okay, so remember you were saying, well, I heard an argument. Well, just now he didn't give one. What he said is that he is complaining about the behavior of atheists, and what he wants me to do is like presuppose or propose some different theory about the preconditions for intelligibility for him to critique, but none of that's given an argument.
Would that be wrong, Mason?
None of that's actually given an argument. That's just telling me what he would like to do. So I'm happy to end it here. I think I'm satisfied at this point because I'm sure that everybody agrees he has no argument for that claim.
Well, I think one of us doesn't have a worldview that can satisfy the preconditions to ask what's the argument for that, right? I mean, that's where we're at. Again, like maybe Mason is nice as he is and polite as he is. Excellent rhetoric game. Hands off, or hats off to that.
How old are you?
But what Mason didn't do is provide a coherent worldview, because he is implicitly making a counterclaim. He's basically saying, "Nuh-uh."
He's just
no, I did provide.
Mason didn't
worldview,
bite the
and
bullet.
I didn't get.
I
didn't get a.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't get a counterclaim. I didn't get a rebuttal. I didn't
just
even
burden
get. Hold
shift.
on.
I need to like move
Hold
past
on.
this. This
Yeah,
is
that's
like
not what
so
I did.
tough.
I didn't.
By the way, I am completely done right now with this. I mean, I'm happy to move on. He can say whatever he wants. I've gotten what I wanted.
Yeah, did I get a reason for
Another
failing to
monologue from
affirm
him is like
premise one?
no.
Did I get more than posturing? I mean, that so a counterclaim was made, at least implicitly. But
You're
notice,
admitting that you wanted him to like bite the bait to burden shift.
yeah, and just no. Well, it's not a burden shift. It's a transcendental argument.
Hey, just real quick. This is what I
Yeah,
heard. This is what I heard from Redefine. He presented an argument that says there's a necessary preconditions for knowledge is this max omni absolute, in which is the actualizer, and the impossibility of the contrary doesn't suggest any other and doesn't suggest otherwise. Now, Precept, is that an argument for what he is positioning, or am I wrong? I don't know. Maybe
I have like 30 seconds to maybe give the argument a push forward. Is the motivation
help
for
me out?
premise,
Help me out. Amy.
yeah, the motivation for premise one is the impossibility of its denial. So the very act of denying premise one that God is the necessary precondition or the absolute itself functions as an absolute claim.
that's right.
Right? So
But
so,
do you understand?
so the assertion, right, is universally that God does not hold this necessary role. So it's the impossibility of the denial. So reductio ad absurdum is baked in to the motivation for premise one of tag. There you go.
But saying that the contrary is impossible is no different from just reasserting the claim.
No,
Yeah,
I just said the impossibility of. Wait, I just said the impossibility of its denial.
Yeah, saying the denial of the claim is impossible is no different
itself.
from just
Yeah, well, no. Yeah,
no different if I can finish saying that the denial
Yeah, you can't finish. Sorry.
if I can finish, I let you finish. You talk, then I can talk. I don't interrupt.
Hey, Precept, I'm not dropping.
I'm only here for like a couple minutes.
On this panel.
I'm only here for like a couple minutes. So.
Did Mason drop himself, or did someone?
No, I dropped.
No, he dropped him.
Yeah, so asking what's the argument for that is an implicit counterclaim, is basically what Precept stated very clearly.
No, you
something
can
that I
affirm that
tried to
claim
point
and
out.
request an argument
Something
in
that
support of it, genius.
something that I pointed out to everyone numerous times, and when you again just. Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I would disagree that there are infinitely more. So here's the confusion. Hold on. Here's the confusion. Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that. Let me respond. So, what your response there suggests that I made an argument for ignorance. I didn't. My argument was that, well, because all these other worldviews fail, therefore my worldview is true. That wasn't my argument. My argument was that because my worldview is true, no other worldview will be able to instantiate their denial, and we witnessed that today.
Okay, I just wanted to correct a few false things Redefine said. Not that I'm.
What is going on with my panel? Why are they dropping?
Hey, gentlemen,
Hey, Precept, man. Let me keep my panel, bro. I hear you.
I'm trying to get work done like a good little boy over here. But
Sorry,
it's really hard
if I can
because
finish my comment. Wait, Redefine. I was saying something before I got kicked.
okay. Let's hear it. Let's hear something substantive. Let's hear something more than what's your argument from man.
First of all, asking if there's a given claim, asking for an argument for that claim actually does not commit you to affirming the negation because you might be agnostic. But secondly, even if I were asserting the negation, because I do think the premise is false, even if I were asserting it, it doesn't matter because whether I believe it's false or whatever is irrelevant to whether you have an argument for the claim.
Yeah, I understand why you're confused because you, as well as the last fella, you keep representing my argument as though I made an argument from ignorance. So let me ask you this: can one make an argument for that which is most fundamental? Is that possible?
No, I can answer his questions. I'm already satisfied that he has no argument, so I'm happy to answer what he wants to say.
Zach, you're wrong, bro.
Yeah, you couldn't reason your way to a worldview. You couldn't reason your way to to certain transcendentals that comport with reality. You couldn't reason.
Saying that
You could
just saying
reason
you don't
for
have
that.
to interrogate.
No, he's
me
just not
to
tracking the question.
Hey,
give that argument.
redefine. Love you to death.
I think that's
Love
a
you to death.
confession right
And I
there.
love everyone who doesn't even love me. But here's the deal. I got to
I love
progress
you
this
too,
forward.
man.
I got to progress this forward, man, because this has been stagnant.
Yeah.
You're positioning the impossibility of the contrary and the preconditions and the argument for that. Rather one side be right or the next, I got to move it forward for just ease of
So
entertainment.
I guess I either unless he wants to ask anything else, maybe like Danny. I know maybe like he can continue with Danny or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So just I guess my closing words would be that at some point someone's going to argue for that which is most fundamental, whatever that might be. And when you do that, when you're arguing for a fundamental argument, for someone to say what's your argument for that, just absolutely misunderstands what it is to be arguing at a fundamental level. If something is fundamental, then there would be nothing undergirding it. And so when we call things like intelligibility and predication into question, those things that again have preconditions that are satisfied by a worldview. I gave a positive argument. No one wanted to engage with it. They could say like, well, wait a minute, like how does your worldview satisfy these preconditions? They could do that, but even by doing that, by predicating, they're making, as Precept pointed out, and I've pointed out, and we've all pointed out, that they're making an implicit counterclaim that they are speaking from a worldview that is not the biblical worldview, and that worldview can provide for things such as like coherence and unity and diversity and certain laws and other transcendentals and all of that stuff. So the question, what's your argument from that, comes from a worldview which cannot satisfy, unless I'm wrong, cannot satisfy those preconditions. And so that's where the argument is. If you don't want to accept the argument, that's fine. You could engage with it.
Summarize?
You could point out that I'm wrong and be like, no, look, we have this other worldview that can satisfy those preconditions, and that's why you're wrong.
That's what I would like to hear. I like to hear. Oh no, just position.
That would be really cool.
Constantine, just so I understand what Redefine just said, I would like to just summarize what you said and correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't want to. Just want to make sure I'm tracking here. So when you say that I'm hearing that you're saying something like it's a category error to ask for the argument of a fundamental argument, and then throughout the conversation, I heard this fundamental thing being said all the time from you, and it sounds like for something to be fundamental, it sounds like it doesn't have any further explanation. It just is. So it sounds like what you're saying is when you're stating this fundamental argument, you don't have further reasons for this fundamental argument. So to ask for the reasons for this fundamental argument would be just like
you're okay, Hatim. You're asking if that's his steel man position, right? You're asking that. You're not
asking if this
it.
is I'm asking. Is that what's
okay? Yeah. Does that okay? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like it's stupid to ask for the argument of a fundamental argument, right? Because
it depends on what. If somebody is just merely saying there's I have this thing that's just a brute fact, but don't ask me about it because it's just a belief that I have that's held without like any reference or something like that. I think that would be a problem. And so, but no, I didn't just insert this or assert this contextless thing that is ultimate. And so I mean, I don't know how much.
Okay, then
I just feel like I don't know how I can make myself any more clear that I've given a positive argument and that you guys have all given a counterclaim and pointed out that like no one's actually given me like a reason, like a legitimate like, hey, look, this is why you're wrong.
With some teeth, bro. With some teeth.
Like justify that, like give me some intellectual, rigorous explanation as to why premise one is problematic. Don't just say like, I don't like sauerkraut. Okay. I don't
look, is there this
yeah.
I don't know. I kind of want to end this. Is there like another?
No, don't respond to him anymore. Let's just move on.
Yeah, can we?
So that's where I'm at. So anyway, I got to get some work done for a little while, but I'll go on mute. But I need
please do get that.
Redefine. I loved it, man. My brother in Christ, I love you to death. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, brother.
By the way,
too, man.
I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a Christian if I didn't share the gospel. Hey, repent and believe in the Christ that is the salvific person who exists in three persons in one essence, which me and Danny are about to get into. For he is the only way to salvation, the way, the truth, and the light. Amen. Hey,
Amen.
so yeah, redefine. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Danny, a few more questions for you. This was fun. This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you count like banging your head at a wall fun, yeah, I guess so.
I'm sorry, do you have something better to do with your Tuesday afternoon, Hatim?
I can play Pokemon.
And you chose to spend it with me again? Oh, man. You fought well, Atreides. So anyway, Danny, just a couple more questions, man, and then I just want to hold to account your worldview. This is something I say. I got to ask you. I say it to a few different people when they come on. When you say that, we're moving on to ethics or meta ethics or morality. Are you okay with that? Hello.
Danny, are you here?
He's probably AFK.
Yeah. All right. Well, when Danny wakes up, that's pretty cool. So I guess I'm gonna ask Monkey Boy then, or Russell. It doesn't matter. When you hold your ethics into accountability, this is what we were saying before Redefine come up, and I say that you are your own moral arbiter. What would you say to that statement?
Okay, so if that's just means like if that's just to say that under my view that like moral truth are stance dependent, then
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. If that's like to say something different, like I somehow choose what's moral or something, then I would disagree.
All right. I'm gonna make a statement right now. You tell me what you think. But there have always been moral constants throughout sociology, throughout anthropology. It is transcendent of chronology or history or culture. And in those moral constants leads evidence to, since there's such a moral constant, that there is a moral constanter. And if you want to know what constanter means, I just made it up.
Okay, well, so I guess like if a moral constant means like some kind of like a regularity, so some
Hmm.
kind of like pattern in moral behavior,
But first
like
off,
some
are you granting that there are certain moral constants? Would that be fair?
yeah, if you mean like regularities, yeah, they're sure they're like patterns in like people's moral judgments, yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah,
But
and so
I don't think that's any evidence, or I don't think that shows any good reason to believe in a god or anything. So
right. Okay. So now let me ask you this. And here's, I'm not saying that it's going to convince you. I assume that you're not on your way to the baptistry after I get off the live with you. But I just got to ask you, if these constants are there, then there's always been a standard. Now I have to ask you how you call that standard into accountability without considering yourself your own moral arbiter. That'd be my last question.
yeah, so first of all, real quick, when you say there's always been a standard, I mean, so
Hmm.
how I would
I would say
think
so.
about
Yeah.
this,
Okay.
yeah.
What if I say there's always been a? I would say yeah. There's always been a standard, and because there's always been moral constants, do you think that necessarily follows?
I guess, well, if you're saying like there's been moral constants, therefore there's been some kind of objective moral standard, I think that wouldn't follow.
Yeah. How would you give account to these consistent moral constants then within your own worldview? How would you hold it into accountability? Because I would assume that you're
Yeah, I
not a moral
think,
relativist. I would assume you're a moral relativist, right, Mason? We've talked
yeah,
about this before.
I am, yeah. So I would just say like, I mean, well, people tend to have I mean, humans like evolved in a like more like you have the same evolutionary history, and they have like the same kind of like biology and live in
Yeah.
roughly like similar environments. So I don't, and they have like social structures and things like that. So I guess like that explains like the moral regularities.
Yeah, I guess so, but that would be the same thing as holding someone accountable for having blue eyes. If we were to put someone to the test for criminology to say it was just an evolutionary biology or a biological drive, I don't think it would hold any substance. You know what I mean? So we have to
So
hold something into accountability at the individual level, and not like some sort of epidemic or like some sort of systemic level of just across the board. This is an evolutionary scale, and so therefore I'm just pre-programmed as a cosmic accident to commit said atrocities.
yeah, so now it sounds like you're saying talking about when you can hold people morally responsible, and
Yeah.
I think there are things
Yeah, that's a
people.
good question. Would I be able to hold people morally responsible if it was evolutionarily driven? Good question.
Sure, I don't see the issue. Besides, by the way, no, I'm not just saying I'm not. I should be clear. I'm not saying like it's only. I'm saying so. Evolutionary history is certainly one influence of like several other factors. I'm not saying that's the only thing.
Yeah. Well, in any case, man. Hey, Danny, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you the same question that I just asked my good friend Mason, my great
Okay.
friend Mason. Here's my position. I'm going to say that since there are moral constants, that it points to a moral standard. But we moved on to ethics, by the way. And
Okay.
inside of these moral constants, throughout anthropology or chronology, that I'd say that there's always been a moral standard, and it has not evolved. Right. So and here's the claim that I'm going to imprint for you: well, morality evolves as we do. I would oppose that because there are certain moral constants. What do you think?
Well, I'm wondering, it seems like that's incongruent with Christianity, given that God modified the law, right? The law wasn't constant. There were modifications based on the
Hmm.
context. It seems like God would agree with me that, what's right and wrong might just depend on the context rather than being kind of an absolute.
Yeah. Can you give me an example, Danny?
Well, for example, I believe unclean animals were not, it was not permissible to eat them, right? But then Paul, under the new covenant, said that these
Hmm.
are all okay to eat,
Yeah.
right? So that was changed.
Grafting in this Gentile covenant to the Abrahamic covenant and not holding them to the Judaic standard. Yeah. There's a question about that. Was that always supposed to be, or was it decided in councils? And my answer to that is yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, I guess we agree.
To an extent, right? Okay, so if there is this change, was this change coming from something immutable, or was it always decided? You got to remember, right? I'm a Calvinist, so I think all these things are determined. All these things are foregone and foreconcluded, right? And so I would not necessarily hold to some sort of mutable God. For example, they say, "Oh, what's the point?" People ask me this all the time. What's the point of prayer? Oh, is it to conform you to His will or Him to conform you to your will? I don't think that God is changeable. I think that goes against one of His properties. What do you think?
I'm fine either way. That whether the law changed as a result from immutable or immutable God is fine.
Yeah, I would also say that any type of language that would suggest that he is mutable is purely anthropomorphic and made for descriptors and not prescriptors.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Hey, Danny, this was fun, dude. I had a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good.
Yeah, this
Nice
was a
talking to
good
you.
live, man. What's that?
Right. Nice talking to you. We'll do it again.
Yeah, I hope so, Danny. Thanks for coming on. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Had a pretty fun live, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for accepting the invitation, guys. Walk in grace.